Thank you very much. It's coming up to 19 minutes to 7 now. Almost 4,000 landlords are thought to be illegally letting properties in Wales after failing to sign up to a compulsory scheme by the Welsh Government. Rent Smart Wales, which began 2 years ago, requires landlords to become registered or licensed. An estate agency was prosecuted here last week for the first time for failing to meet the terms of the scheme. Well, joining us in the studio is Douglas Haig, Vice Chairman and Director of Wales for the Residential Landlords Association. Good morning to you.
Okay.
We're hearing then around 4,000 landlords haven't signed up. Does that figure sound about right to you?
Well, the original estimate from the Welsh Government was around 130,000 landlords, so it seems rather convenient now that we've switched down to 90,000 landlords at this stage, and our figures really are between 100 and 110,000 landlords we predicted, so we think actually there's still quite a long way to go in terms of the number of landlords that should be registered.
Why haven't people signed up then?
Well, the information campaign at the beginning was generally quite poor. It was slow in coming out. We feel that they rushed this scheme through as opposed to planning for it properly. Some of the channels that they've been using haven't necessarily been the most effective, and I don't feel that they've really engaged with the industry in the way that they could have done to have got the message out there.
But if around 90,000 people have signed up, I mean, the message has gone out. People have heard about this scheme and the necessity to register.
Absolutely, and I will say that I am slightly surprised at the numbers they have managed to get registered, because if you compare it to, say, the Scottish scheme, we're still talking about 90% of success rate of registration of landlords there, and that's been operating for well over 10 years. So there are some levels of success in terms of what they've done, but there's still a real lack of communication outside of Wales, because there's a lot of landlords that own properties in Wales that live outside of Wales, and they've not received that communication. And day to day, I'm speaking to people, to tenants, to landlords, and they still haven't come across or understand the obligation of their obligations to comply with the scheme. So there is definitely still some work to do there.
Have we seen any effect from this register so far? Have we seen anything change in the sector due to this register?
Well, I think Rent Smart Wales on its own isn't going to achieve the objectives that they're setting out. I mean, we agree with the objectives in terms of improving the private rented sector in general, and improving access for both sides to be able to enforce their rights and know their obligations. But we don't feel it's the right way of approaching it.
Why not?
Well, it ends up being a bureaucratic process, as opposed to the enforcement aspect being focused on making sure that houses are good quality. So people are actually, the enforcement capacity isn't there to actually focus on the types of housing and making sure that they're up to standard. And instead of doing that, what's happening is the enforcement's actually going on making sure that landlords are complying with this bureaucratic scheme instead.
But doesn't that have to happen first of all before you can enforce different standards? You have to know who owns the houses, where these properties are.
Well, there's access to a lot of that information already, and ultimately we're talking about £1.6 million that's been invested into this scheme so far, when actually a lot of that money could have gone to actually enforcing making sure that the properties are up to the right standard in the first place.
What would you like to see happen now? Would you like to see further information, more campaigns to make sure that everyone is registered?
Yes, I mean, whilst we don't agree with a registration process on its own, we do agree with training and improving and upskilling landlords to ensure that they know their obligations and improve the quality of housing. But so we would like to see more resources put into training. They are talking about continued professional development throughout the scheme, so we do support that. In essence, we've always been very keen on the training aspect. But what we would like to do is see an increase in resource in general in enforcement. Not necessarily for Rent Smart Wales, but to ensure that if a tenant has a problem with their landlord, the vast majority of landlords are good landlords providing good quality properties, but we know that there are people out there that are not providing the right sort of housing. So, and to get to those people, they are not the people that are going to end up registering on this scheme. So we need to make sure we put resources and focus on finding those people and ensuring that those tenants don't live in poor quality properties.
Douglas, thank you very much. That's Douglas Haig from the Residential Landlords Association.
It's 7:15.